Samantha West has worked in the construction and facilities management industries for 30 years, most recently as a commercial director for an FM contractor. Using her lived experience as a transgender woman, Samantha has now started her own consultancy to help businesses improve their ED&I credentials. We spoke to Samantha about turning her voluntary work into a new business venture and why it's important to create judgment-free spaces when discussing ED&I. Please introduce yourself and tell us about your career history and highlights.
My name's Samantha West. I am a commercial consultant at the moment, but previously I was a commercial director. I started out 36 years ago as a QS working for Taylor Woodrow Construction, mainly working on retail sites. Carried on through to working on MOD projects, and I ended up RAF Bryce Norton, where I ended up being what's called a WSM, a project manager there, ultimately, because the previous one had left. So that was great, and that was right at the end of the 90s, and that is when I started being involved with the facilities management industry, and started to grow what was then Taylor Woodrow Facilities Management. And we picked up contracts like Shell UK, O2, and a whole host of others, including some PFIs. And then winding the clock forward, after 36 years continuous service, I got made redundant and took that opportunity forward, and now I work as a commercial consultant. One important fact about my whole career path is that 8 years ago I made a transition, and I moved from my old self to now Samantha West. I used to be male in a male-dominated industry, so put myself at a fair bit of disadvantage, I suppose, in some ways. But there, I decided to make that move, and I think I've talked about that quite a lot in the FM press articles over time.
Tell us about OK to be Different.
I set up OK to be Different after I got made redundant. It was a chance for me to set up my own business. It's something I'd always wanted to do, and I wanted to do something that I was really passionate about. My passion is diversity and inclusion, and particularly for the transgendered community. And so I set up a business to help other businesses improve their credentials around this area, particularly transgender inclusion. And now I'd done this quite a lot before in my previous life, voluntary, and I'd carried out a number of speeches with a number of different organisations over the years. London Legacy, John Mangler, Amnesty International, to name but a few. So I thought I'd take that experience forward and register a business. I was quite conscious that this business, previously I was just doing it voluntary, so I felt it was important as part of the transaction in the business is that I gave money to charity that supported people that are having difficulty in actually finding themselves, particularly in the workplace, but generally in society. So I am supporting 2 charities in that regard as part of the business offering, and I hope to at least create some funds for them as well. So the first charity is Hector's House. Hector's House is basically set up by a husband and wife team whose child Hector, basically he couldn't be himself. He was troubled, and in the end the worst thing happened. Now, this charity actually assisted my own children, my eldest, during a time of difficulty. And I think, they do a wonderful job, and they go around schools and all the rest of it, and create an awareness. And what they do is they take text or a phone line, and they signpost individuals, whoever they are, to the right agencies to get them the right support. The other charity is Impactful Lives, which is a Hertfordshire-based LGBT group which helps local businesses, amongst other things, to thrive, who are members of the LGBT community. They also engage with the NHS Trust in the area and carry out a number of charitable events.
Why do you feel it's important to create safe learning spaces where mistakes are not criticised when it comes to inclusion training?
When I actually visit companies, I create a really relaxed environment. In fact, we almost have a bit of a laugh in it. It's really important that everybody's relaxed and are not worried about making mistakes. Because people are almost frightened by ED&I professionals who are constantly talking about it's got to be this, it's got to be that, it's got to be the other, and in the end the poor workforce just gets confused about it. And I just think that a more simplistic approach about just driving through the importance of kindness and care is more relevant. So if somebody asks me a question, and let's face it, sometimes, we've heard the term white male and stale. Well, I don't like that term at all. It drives a wedge between people who are trying to do good stuff around diversity and inclusion and that particular group. So I invite anybody, but the people as well, and if they make mistakes, it's fine, because it's a learning environment. Simple as that. And in fact, one person said, Samantha talking about her true story and talking about certain elements of inclusion, I've learned more from her in 60 minutes than hours and hours of diversity and inclusion training. And I think it's partly to do with engagement during the event, which is very high. Everybody's really engaged. You can see it on everybody's face. But also, the simplicity of it.
What role can allies play in making workplaces more productive and inclusive?
Allies are really important for everybody in the community, no matter what element they are in the LGBT plus community. They provide a role that gives support to those who are finding difficulty, showing others who are not allies the way forward in terms of how to behave, how to act, and how to include. Not to mention, I know lots of allies, and every time there's an event, they are really wonderful and supportive. So, and it just helps people like me carry on.
What would you say to people who believe ED&I should take a backseat in business?
In the recent history, there's been discussions from certain ministers who are named nameless, but all this ED&I stuff, all this diversity inclusion stuff, you should be getting on with your business, driving your businesses forward. And I think that's a massive error. The whole diversity inclusion piece actually adds to business performance. It adds to profitability, productivity, and well-being in the workplace. And if everybody can be themselves in the workplace, clearly they're going to perform better. So I think that was completely misguided, and employers should take note and keep it driving forward. And they have done, a lot of them have done an amazing job so far. And for somebody to say, turn off the gas, is ridiculous. I think employers have been pretty good.
What has been the effect of harmful headlines about the transgender community?
In recent times, things have been getting worse for the transgender community, particularly driven by more famous people, I suppose. Again, not to mention names, but it gives other people in the community, or the general wider community, an excuse to not treat transgender people in the way that they should. There's been a lot of negative items in the media, and the hate crime has gone up massively from pre-COVID levels to around about 200 reported crimes to over 4,000 in post-2022. And that's just reported. The estimate is around about another 7,000 actually happening, which has got to stop. So I think all these comments even filter in the workplace sometimes as well, and people don't need much of an excuse to sort of turn on transgendered individuals or not give them the respect that they deserve. I have lots of examples in the workplace where people have suffered. There was one particular example of, not with the individual company they work for, but the customer base that they went to visit, and the customers of that FM company did not treat that person in the way that they should. So it's not always within the FM company itself. It can be with the customer base that they're sending transgender people into, and that the businesses need to take care of that and take the appropriate action when they hear about it. I think as an individual, if you hear it in the workplace, you need to talk to your line manager about it at least, or you may have a whistleblowing line if the company's set up properly, or a call out as some people call it, and use that, and then the company should react, because sometimes the companies don't react in the appropriate way, and because it's a customer, say that somebody's an FM customer to an FM company causes the issue, then there's kind of a bit of a tension between keeping in good terms with the customer and protecting the transgendered individual on the ground, because usually it's levied at one of the customer's members of staff. And what should not happen is it's just left to the transgender individual to fight the fight on their own.